Okay. Yeah, contact event number 6. The weird is all over the lower mainland. So basically this one is me and a friend at Minnetonka Park. And I basically go into this craft. I witness a craft in the forest and I have a contact event, and they're confirming for me that I'm ready for the rising. So it's this thing that I'm doing with them. And but this area also is packed with paranormal. So Minnetonka Park is at the end of Pitt Lake, and this whole area has got piles of paranormal activity that I wasn't aware of, and some of them are fascinating things. 20 witnesses described several orange balls of energy hovered overhead 500 feet before shooting off. That was at Pitt Meadows. A zigzagging star that responded to a laser pointer. Pitt Meadows, Pitt Lake, consistent white. So this is interesting. Consistent white-blue flashes, changing to red, more intense than in lightning, and consistent to one location, continued behind a mountain, behind Pitt Lake. Several witnesses. So they're over here. I think actually in the report, they're over here. And then behind a mountain, they're witnessing tons of flashes. Very weird, man. Okay, this is, out of the entire database, I think this is my favorite sighting. So these people, it was late one night. My wife and I were coming home from Burnaby. We were going over the Red Bridge off of Lougheed Highway on Pitt River Road. What they're talking about is right here. We're talking, I don't know, what is that? A couple kilometers. Back then, it was a wooden bridge with lots of forested areas and a few clearings. As we cleared the bridge, we stopped. We had to stop because there was a major lineup of cars stopped on the road. People were outside of their cars looking up. We stopped and got out of the car and looked up as well. There was a massive, dark object above. It must have been half the size of Port Coquitlam. It was about 100 meters above the tree line. We could see the outer edge, which had windows, but could not see into the windows. There were very bright white lights on the bottom of this UFO as well. It was completely silent. I would guess we stood there for about 5 minutes before the object took off at a tremendous speed toward the northeast without a sound. Everyone got into their car and left in a hurry. As we got in our car, I overheard someone mention that they were going to go home and turn on the news because this was earth-changing. I got really excited and took off home. I turned on the TV thinking this as well. This was it, first contact. Sadly, nothing on the news, nothing in the paper at all, nothing. Looking back, I wish I had gotten the name and a number of a few of the people. Looking back also, we had a camera in the car. So this is like one of those moments, and I've had this as well too, where you think you're witnessing something and obviously other people are going to see this and oh my God, like this is evidence and oh my God, this is it. This is the beginning. And there's nothing. No one reports it. No one mentions it. And it's not earth-changing. And it turned out this was not the end and this was not contact. But it happens, a massive object. They all see it. And it's definitely like a couple kilometers away from my own contact event. So hilarious to me, but nonetheless. Okay, and there's tons of Bigfoot sightings at Pitt Lake. Tons and tons. I have a personal friend. He was back up here at Pitt Lake, on this end of Pitt Lake here, and he's with some buddies. Tons of mist over the lake, and it's coming to dusk, and they hear this screech, but it's a woman screeching, but the volume is inhuman, but it's a woman, and they are freaked out and terrified by it, and it's so inhuman, the sound of it, he said. So tons of weird stuff can happen up here. And in the ufobc database, you get tons of Bigfoot sightings at Pitt Lake. Alongside that, you also have missing 411 cases here too. David Pilates focuses on Leo Gaspard, but there's actually a bunch from the early 1900s of people who go in and never come back. All around a gold mine that they're all looking for. Apparently there's a legend of a gold mine. So yeah, you get crazy disappearances here. Margaret Anderson is actually a really sad one, and this includes a boulder. This is a couple hiking. By the way, these people are hiking, and they're on Burke Mountain. My contact event is here. I mentioned in the book that I parked on Quarry Road. That's where we park, me and my friend. Well, the missing 411 case is the couple leave their car on Quarry Road, the same road. And they go hiking up for the day. They go to a lake. They come back. They lose the trail, but they're walking. The woman is walking up only 100 meters or so in front. He sees his wife turn around a boulder, and she is gone. It's really sad. He's screaming for her. Like, how can someone just disappear, turn around a boulder? He stays the night looking for her. He stays there in the woods. Then that night he goes out, finds the road, finds the car, calls the police. She's found at the end of a bottom of a cliff, 100 feet below the bottom of a cliff. The search and rescue can't determine how she died because she doesn't look like she fell. So she has no markings of having fallen or tumbled or anything. She's placed almost on a boulder, and yet she has a head concussion or something. And so that's how she died. But the husband is never charged, and the search and rescue were confused. So very weird. And that happens right here in this area, right? But the thing is, that's not even conducive or consistent with a Bigfoot sighting. Like, having that type of missing 411 doesn't even add up for a Bigfoot. It doesn't. Right? It's just, again, it seems like something paranormal, separate from other paranormal events going on in the area, but consistent with being paranormal. So, yeah, strange stuff, man. Okay, not too much to report. Port Moody, funny enough, not that much occurred there. And there's some things that happened. There were lights in the sky, yada, yada, but not too much that was interesting to make for the presentation today. So at this point, I'm made it to the rising had occurred to me, and now I am traveling in my story, and I go to Hornby Island. This is Hornby Island. It is a beautiful island, and I was pushing my boundaries. I had put my car over here at Buckley Bay, and I hitchhiked over, and I spent a couple nights on the Tribune Bay Park, and had a contact event out there. The contact event was a red orb that I saw. Just like someone else mentioned, it kind of reminded you of a red flare, and that's what I saw. Other people have seen very similar lights out in the exact same location. My girlfriend and I were sitting in my car at a beach in Comox, BC at about 9:30 p.m. when we noticed two fairly bright orange lights in the distance between the islands of Texada and Hornby. Literally over here, that's Texada. So in between, they're seeing all this light activity, and they are over here, Comox. So they're witnessing all this activity right in the exact spot. This is only 3 years later from my contact event. These lights would disappear or sort of fade out, only to reappear in different areas, sometimes very close to the water, side by side, or at one time, one ball very high in the sky while the other was very close to the water. So just this lot of movement and change occurring. We also saw smaller glowing balls flowing low to the water at speeds that were astonishing. Lots of activity people see in that area, in Courtney, Denman, so out in that area there. But fascinating for me, this guy out in Bowser. So Bowser is right here. Again, really close to my contact, the spot where my contact event is. He's here, and he's out witnessing this, something out here in this area. And he sees a large, bright red light. It just hovered in one spot, shifting back and forth and up and down just slightly. Then another came down at an angle towards it, and the other started heading south down island quickly. The second was bigger and brighter, and they both had a half circle shape to them and red light emanating from just underneath. I cannot tell you how insane that is, that someone had witnessed something very similar to mine and my contact event in the exact same, diameter, same like kilometers all apart. So I just thought that was fascinating stuff, and really, yeah, again, happy and amazed of finding all these connecting pieces. I'm always fascinated by the behavior of the UFOs. So I'll go into this. This is a sighting that occurred close to one of my other contact events, but the report by ufobc said, so this UFO landed, and when it lands, he says, a more ideal landing spot for seclusion could hardly be found. Again, you get that observation aspect going on, how the UFO somehow knows how to place itself, so it's not how it's going to be observed, or at least will only be observed by the people who it wants to be observed by. And this is where my contact event happened, and that's exactly how I describe it in the book. The UFO places itself right here, as if it knew exactly how I would be able to be the only one to witness it. It's just the perfect placement of it was absolutely bizarre to me, and for a researcher to kind of pinpoint that with another UFO landing, I thought that was really interesting. And not just that, we allowed ourselves to speculate that the UFO wasn't attracted to the boys by curiosity, but originally intended to land or pick someone up or drop someone off because of the way it placed itself. Well, that's hilarious because that's exactly what this UFO did with me, was it was picking me up. So it placed itself in a spot not to be seen only by me, directly across from my tent, and I was the one it was picking up. So just weird how people kind of interlay these other researchers interlay these connecting pieces of behaviors that are I'm witnessed or a part of my story. Contact event number 9, Bottle Lake. This point, I'm traveling around Vancouver Island, living the hobo lifestyle. And for the longest time, I thought that this was just a random spot where my contact event occurred, only to find it was kilometers away from 2 missing 411 cases. But there's not a lot of sightings in the area, actually, funny enough. Someone in the BC UFO database did witness a craft that looked like my Bottle Lake craft, though. So near the Portman Bridge, again, that was in Coquitlam, and very fascinating. I could see it was metallic with two dome-like shapes. On top, a rectangular body with something protruding from the rear. So it's not 100%, but you know, people see kind of, there's not just the discs, right? There's other types of crafts. And I thought that it's kind of similar to mine, and this was all the detail, and that's the picture they took. So this was kind of what I saw inside the craft, and yeah, fascinating. There are 3 missing 411 cases. Sylvia Apps, so she is not in this area, but she's over here where she goes missing. So I don't know the exact area. It's in the mountain range. So you can drive from here and you put yourself here, and you can hike up the mountain ranges from this backside over here. She's on some ridges. She's obviously gone for a couple of days. They have record of her reaching the peak that she was trying to go to because she signs it. But then she places, she appears to, on a ridge, place her bag down. And then she places her camera and her poles down somewhere else. And then that's it. There's no other sign of her, and they find nothing. So the search and rescue actually said it looked like she lost her mind because of the way that she just kind of placed things down, and especially important things that you need to survive. And yet Sylvia was known by all her relatives to not, she was mentally fit, she was physically fit, and for all this to occur, she also had like GPS systems. She had things with her to not get lost. So here's a person doing very bizarre behavior and then being lost, and there's no sign of her ever again. Literally, they find no sign of her ever again.
And Jeff, I just want to come in there about the placement of items. One of the aspects that David Paulides has found, and other investigators have also found, is that people will sometimes remove their shoes for no reason at all and put them tidily in one place, and then start removing clothing as well. But it's this kind of like placement of things, not just randomly just thrown about. That is very, very important as well.
Yeah. Well, the weird one is that they'll have no shoes missing. The body will look like it got dropped. They'll have shoes will be missing. The body will be dropped, and then there will be no no dirt on the feet. Like the socks were not. So they hadn't walked to their destination, and yet they're missing shoes, and then they have no sign that they've walked. So that's like and there's one actually in America, in the States, where they were dropped, and there was dropped in snow, and there's no tracks leading to them. So they clearly have been dropped from above. And so yeah, weird stuff, man. Weird. And again, like we don't have the answers to this stuff. Dwayne and Richard are, okay. So these guys are the ones that happen right in my area here. Both of them are one's up here on this ridge. The other is at Cream Lake. So it's a bowl. It's this lake here, this one right here. Cream Lake is one, and then this bowl is the other. What's fascinating is so he was with, it's Richard. No, Richard is the one who's caught up here in the ridge. It's Dwayne, who is, Dwayne is the one who's with 3 people, and then he is the one who says, I'm going to go bushwhack down to the lake, and you guys can take the trail. He's never seen again. He's got a backpack full of equipment. Everything's with him. He's got a raft. He's got fishing poles, and he's got like everything was with him. And then how does a person go into a bowl with very little other ways out, right? There's like barely, you can't get out any other way. He's got all his equipment with him. All of it goes missing. What they do find are the fishing poles, and they're broken in half. That's why I say it's things like this that make it look like territory, like food, like something didn't want him there and says, hey, you're taking my food. And so that's just a really weird behavior, even for any entity. That's just really strange. And so everything is taken. So how can someone go missing like that? And of course, 100 search and rescue come and they find nothing, right? They find a hat floating in the water and they find the fishing poles, and that's the end of it.
And it was his change of behavior with his colleagues to suddenly say he was going to go off on his own.
Point of separation. Yeah, point of separation.
And full of bravado, almost as though he was to link in with something that you've experienced, is the pushing to your limits.
Yeah, you got it. Yeah, pushing to the limits. I'm going to do it myself. It from the story, it looked like it took an entire day to bushwhack. So it was really weird. Like he kind of decided, I'm going to do this very rough thing and isolate myself, and then he just never gets shown up ever again. Yeah, very weird. Richard Milner. His car is parked in the exact. So I mentioned in my story, I had the contact event up here, and then I come back that night and I actually sleep in the exact same trailhead that he leaves his car in, and he goes missing. So I thought that was really weird. And he does a small hike. His hike, no one should get lost in his hike. Even the police and the search and rescue were so confused. How did this guy go missing? And there was never a sign of him ever again. And his car was in the same, anyway, that's just even for me really weird when I found that out, that he left his car in the same trailhead that I slept in. I slept in the trailhead that he left his car in. And I just thought that was really too close for comfort for me. Not even that, people. I actually did a small day hike, but I didn't do the full hike. I mentioned in the book I was having trouble hiking in those days, and I kind of went up a little bit and then came back down, but I was on that trail that he went up and never came back. So yeah, too close for comfort, but very weird indeed.
Would you just tell us again what that area is again?
I think it's called Flower. I have it here, Flower Ridge. So Dwayne, is that right? Richard right there? Richard, yeah. Cream Lake. He was heading to Cream Lake, and it's a 4-hour hike. It's up this ridge, and and that's it. Over 50 searchers. So he parked his car here, and you come up the ridge here, and that's it. He was never found again. Yeah.
Coincidence that you parked your car in exactly the same place.
Bam! Yeah, exactly, man.
And did you, just to butt in here quickly with you, did you feel that it was an orchestrated event for you to get there, to be in that place, or something?
No. In the moment, you don't. Okay, your question is awesome, and I'm going to ask you say something. Okay, so in my second contact event, that's the one that the memory comes out in. So it's all around a second contact event, and the memories come out by going out to the location. And when I go out there, I bring the screen memory to mind. I can feel I was lured out as an observer to the event. I can feel I'd been lured. But when I brought up I went to the hypnotic regression of that contact event. By the way, the hypnotic regression was accurate because I ended up putting pieces together about where I went, and I found accurate locations in the forest. So that was that was a 100% conclusively authentic hypnotic regression that provided real memories for me. That's how I say that. There's no feeling of being lured in the memory. I'm the one with the compulsion. I want to go do this thing. I don't know what I want to do. I want to do that. I don't know why I want to do that. I just want to do that. You're not feeling lured. You're not feeling a compulsion. You just have the desire. You think it's your own desire. That's the problem. You think it's yours. And yet, as the observer removed, I could feel the luring that had taken place. It feels like it's a choice I'm making, and I'm the one making that choice on my own. It's really that says a lot, actually. To me, that says a lot, right? So there's like a telepathic, I call it subconscious telepathic, where they're talking to the subconscious. So you just feel like it. I want to go do that thing. I don't know why I want to go do it. I want to go do that thing. And that's what ends up happening.
It's the manipulation of minds. That's what it is, Jeff.
Yeah, well, telepathic, yeah. And I mean, it's hard to say to manipulation because I'm not clear that humans don't do this to each other, right? Like we have, there's subconscious stuff that goes on with us as it is, right? That's kind of what marketing is, right? Marketing is a subconscious manipulation of the mind, right? And so anyway, yeah, but in the cases of people who don't want it, yeah, maybe that is manipulation. So 9. So number 10. So as we go across Canada, there'll be quite a bit of jumping. The only thing to connect here is very fascinating indeed. This is where I meet the twins, and I see a cow on the bed, medical bed. Oh, first off, yeah, okay, I see the cow on the medical bed, so that's how we define this contact event. First off, when I'm the contact event I have, there is a massive object. I'm on the road and I become the me that knows them, and there's a massive object in the sky. You know, massive objects can be in the sky and humans cannot know about it, is really the point I'm making here. And there's actually a very fascinating case in ufobc. My girlfriend and we were in my little sports car heading up a long straight hill just north of 100 Mile House. Then we noticed a dark object far in front of us, which seemed to hover over the highway. Finally, I said to my girlfriend, "Are you seeing what I'm seeing?" There were no lights anywhere, no other vehicles on the highway, just this massive black oval shape hanging just a few hundred feet above the highway. I remember getting the chills, like my hair standing up on my skin. I mean, this was unexplainable. The estimated size of the object was at least a mile in diameter based on the speed we were traveling, which was just under its darkness. Based on everything I know of science and nature, there's no definitive explanation for this event. There's been a guy making comments on the YouTube videos on several different things I've been on, and every time he's saying, "Where are they?" This is where this is where it is. Like when they're in, I'm certain this is what it is. They're in massive objects, and we just can't see them. I'm convinced the phasing is an ability for things to go through it, and you don't know you're going through it. It's like it's what the elder says to me, that they're not cloaked, but transparent, meaning light is going through it, which means I would imagine an object can go through it, meaning radar can't pick it up. And so they're phased in that kind of way. That's what I assume here. Like, how the hell are you having these objects in the sky and no one's ever knowing about it, right? So, okay, let's get to the cattle mutilations. So, another connecting piece here about this contact event. Sorry, lots of talking. Okay, again, my own brain is blown. The amount of cattle mutilations in northern Saskatchewan. I could never have known that, having this memory. I just pulled out the memory and just, reported the memory as it was. I saw a cow on the craft. Now, I didn't see it mutilated. I have to mention that I didn't see it mutilated, but it was a physical cow, and the premise being this was tied to cattle mutilations. Well, there were tons of cattle mutilations in the area. A farmer in North Saskatoon, right? Mutilated cows, right? Cattle mutilation mystery, all in different areas, Stockholm, Saskatchewan. And Ian, I've actually got a Linda Moulton Howe report here, and it's even further north. It's closer to the area than any of the other CBC reports, right? Cattle mutilations, glowing discs in Saskatchewan. She's pointing where they are, excuse me. And this is the cusp of the further north area I was going. We're talking really north stuff here, and Maidstone, Saskatchewan. This is what's going on, man. People are having paranormal experiences out in these areas. And so she's seeing, her report is, there's Maidstone right there. So I was in this green area. That's because I passed Flin Flon. So Linda Moulton Howe has a really, that's close. I mean, we're of course not close. We're talking hundreds of kilometers close, but still, man, I'm in the province with which cattle mutilations are occurring, and I have a memory of a cattle mutilation on the craft. So, again, always trying to put these pieces together. Do you know this report, Ian?
I'm not. I'm familiar with a lot of them from Canada. I just have to look at the specifics of that one. But it is a fascinating guess that you've picked up that there are so many going on, and over the years as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And I remember when you first mentioned that, almost as an aside, when you first brought this up, that there was a cow on there as well. And I said, "What? This is a significant part, because other people have seen the cows on the craft as well."
Right.
You can see the classic mutilation cases there, where it's the jaw, and the other thing is, as we often observe, that they are often sky side up with mutilations.
Interesting. Sky side up. What does that mean? Sky side up?
Well, the mutilation is usually on one side. The jaw is excised like that in a square section. We recently did this on Earth Files. We dealt with a case that was in I believe,
Oh
where
my
was it now?
God. Okay,
Yeah,
so that's a
and
crazy connection too. Because like
yeah,
that's what happens here. It's on a medical bed. It's not standing up, it's not alive. It's flat on a medical bed.
yeah,
So then the
yeah,
idea that they're gonna cut it apart is again matches, it's another corroboration of what I saw, that this was something that was
exactly.
laying on its side and it was dead already. And then they mutilated and cut it up, as opposed to being alive and standing and then they're scissoring it or doing something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, usually, I believe the modus operandi is that the cattle or the cow is transported into the craft, the mutilation is carried out in the craft, and then the animal is then returned.
Yeah. Yeah. And I lean towards, what they told me during that contact event, that they asked for permission. That they're interacting in a paranormal way, right? So they're able to talk to the consciousness of that animal, and then they're the ones saying, "Can we use you?" And here's, like, I don't really know, but my guess is that literally they say, like, everything's a step of like an exchange of evolution, as it was for me, right? Like, let's do this experiment with you, and you'll learn, you'll evolve as well too. And so I kind of imagine something like that happens here. They're like, hey, if we can use your body, you can become like a gray alien, part of our society or something. And for the animal, it's an evolution step. And so they're like, oh, that's a really good idea. I love that idea. And then the gray aliens are like, great. And then they can take apart the body and use the pieces, right? Now, does that really happen? I don't know. But the idea of the exchange seems to be pretty prevalent. And you do recognize in your own research too that there seems to be a permission thing that seems to be part of at least the contact experience. So I for my belief system, it actually goes into the way they deal with animals and things like that as well too. So yeah, I can't speak for missing 411 though, but definitely seems that way for the humans and the cattle mutilations. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and we're still divided on what the purpose is of the cattle mutilations, whether or not it's for genetic reasons, or a monitoring of environmental factors,
right.
or sustenance, or maybe some of all of the above.
Yeah, that's very interesting, because wasn't in Missing 411, the UFO connection, David Pilates, sorry, he really links these elk mutilations tied to the possibility that they were monitoring, environmental factors, that they were looking
And
at, the brain disease.
Chronic wasting disease.
Yeah.
Oh,
So the idea that there's something, it's not that they're taking something, and again, they don't explain anything to me about what they're doing, so I don't really know. But also, I was going to ask you, but I already found out the answer. But I thought it was really interesting how many of the mutilations were occurring to human genetically modified animals, right? Cows, dogs, cats, horses. They're all over the thousands of years. They're genetically modified by humans, right? But it does seem to be more prevalent. But there are cases. I saw in the Linda Moulton House, there's a couple cases of kangaroos and things like that, right? Like there are still. But what's your thought about? What's your take on that? The genetically modified versus the
all types of animals, but a lot of focus is on the cattle, but also
right.
horses as well.
Yeah,
And
horses, yeah.
often we find, and I found this myself when I've spoken to people who've had the animal mutilated, that they would say that was my best animal, that was the prime animal.
Oh, right.
Which means, if you remember those cases from Oregon a few years ago, a couple of years ago, or whatever, where 5 bulls were found, they were specifically, or let's say, targeted, and perhaps were some of the best animals of the herd. So it's very selective and specific.
Yeah.
This phenomenon.
Yeah, not random. Specific. Yeah, very interesting. Okay, so contact event 11, just out here in Mill Lake. There's nothing too much to report except for this was the contact event that I'm in water in a boulder, and I become the me that knows them, and I write it in the book. It's a more pronounced transfer over to the me that knows them. And I just thought that has me really zeroing in on what the hell is going on here. Is this electromagnetic? When I become the me that knows them, as I always mention, there's a biological experience going on with it. And I've been talking to other contactees and some other researchers too, trying to what do you think? What do you think about this? And the fact that I'm zeroing in that I'm on a boulder in the water, and it's a very pronounced transference over to the me that knows them. So there's like a connection there that I don't even really have the answer to. And so another fascinating piece to that. Right? Contact event number 12. Ian, you did this for me, so thank you, man. So for those who know my story and know that I was presenting publicly, this was the drawing I made of the craft I saw for my 12th contact event. That happens, by the way, sorry, I need to just to keep you all abreast. That happens in Nova Scotia, out here in the Annapolis Valley. Boom. I have a 12th contact event, and the alien was in this craft. And it looks exactly like John Lennon's craft. I had no knowledge of that. Ian, you pointed that out to me, and I just thought that was totally insane, totally amazing. And what a weird synchronicity or connection, and just a similarity. Even like the rows of lights, like they're attached, right? And that's what I saw. They were part of a string of lights, and they were colorful. Mine were colorful lights, and these were red, but it's very cone-like, and yeah, very weird. And so I witnessed the craft kind of swinging back and forth. That's how I recalled it. Before I became the me that knows them, it's doing this weird thing, and then it dropped. Well, there was a couple of those weird motions were witnessed by people in the ufobc database. So in 2001 in Burnaby, 2 people mentioned they were traveling by bus when they spotted a fluttering leaf-like motion UFO over the Burrard Inlet. I thought that was really weird. In Maple Ridge in 2001, same year, by the way, we were walking over one of the buildings. I pointed out a white on top, green on the bottom, sphere descending in a falling leaf pattern. So I think that's that. When I'm seeing falling leaf, it's kind of swinging back and forth. And that's what go ahead.
I've come across that description many times, the falling leaf description.
Yeah.
Many times over the years.
Yeah, it's weird. I now know that in Susie Hansen's book, The Dual Soul Connection, she gets the physicist, Rudy Sootchild, and he actually breaks down what he thinks is the gravity. It's like it's a position of the craft, and then it's the way it's basically holding the gravity. Anyway, he explains it in a very fascinating way of what he thinks is going on with a gravity device. As it's kind of lowering. So fascinating stuff, man. Okay, we're skipping ahead. Port Coquitlam is where I had my contact event, but it's only a couple hundred meters away from a landing. Boom. So this is where I see the Man in Black. I have an experience with the Man in Black. And this is the location of my contact event right here. Well, a landing occurred right here. Like, I can't even tell you, like, so right here, right there, right here, right there, right here, right there, across the other side of the river. I'm on one side of the river. I meet a Man in Black, and then they're on the other side of the river. Is this report here. So on August 16th, 1974, 3 small boys were returning to their home on the outskirts of Port Coquitlam. The boys then turned towards the source of the noise and saw an object approaching over the trees, traveling south or north, so either way, over the railway bridge, spanning the river. The object had a red light on top and a green on the bottom. The object reversed its course and with an undulating motion headed for a small clearing area amongst the trees in a sand pit. The UFO began to settle down for a landing. And in a state of petrified amazement, the boys remained at their point of observation, about 150 feet from the touchdown site. As the object settled down to land, it gave off a blast of hot air that disturbed the ground so violently the boys were covered in a film of dust. Immediately prior to making contact, the object extended short legs, and then some action on the part of the machine caused sand and stones to be sucked upwards in a violent swirling manner. A few seconds later, the boy said blue sparks came out from under the ground of the machine. It melted the gravel. People were able to come out, and they were able to take samples. So despite the fact that several showers had occurred since the landing, the depressions and carbonized material was still clearly evident. A more ideal landing spot for seclusion could hardly be found. So that's the one I was referring to. So, so perfect were the conditions, so accessible to a major highway nearby, which is this highway. And then the railway tracks. So yeah, so the railway tracks on one side and the highway on the other side. Basically, yeah, so we're talking a couple hundred meters away from my own contact event. I just thought that was really totally insane, actually. Yeah. Go ahead, Ian.
No, I was going to say, it's amazing the number of sightings, or let's say close encounter events that take place within a small, let's say, relatively small area, a wooded area inside an area of population. We've just been doing on Earth Files the cases in New Jersey, and that covered the landing of the craft in Brunswick Park in Jersey City in 1975. But when I started looking at the database for the National UFO Reporting Center database for New Jersey, I saw so many craft sightings on the ground in such a smallish area. And again, this seems to be repeating itself in Vancouver.
Yeah, interesting, man. That's an interesting observation. Yeah, that's you sound like an idiot when I'm talking about a contact event. And this was the area, like with a man in black and a gray alien right here. And it's broad daylight. It's in the woods. Yeah, it's like kind of covered it in the woods. But it's totally insane. And yeah, you're right. The other one just happened right here, can't even wrap my head around some of this stuff. Actually, it's but yeah,
and it's alongside the river as well.
Alongside the river as well. Yeah, you got it. Yeah,
because I tracked a lot of the cases and a lot of the witnesses that we were looking at in the specific item that we covered last week on Earth Files was along the Hudson River, along that Hudson River, and so we got a lot of sightings along there, which was quite amazing, really. And here we are again seeing the same sort of thing in Vancouver.
Yeah. Well, yeah, they got the Fraser River with the Portman Bridge. You got Coquitlam River here with two sightings close by each other. Yeah, I didn't think rivers, but it's really bizarre that rivers are a part of the picture here. This is the Man in Black. Okay, we about to say something, Ian?
Yeah, I was going to say rivers and creeks, they also feature in the cryptozoology world with the Bigfoot and Dogman as having, let's say, migratory routes along creeks, almost as though they use them for navigation. Also, train tracks are also quite popular for those cryptid sightings. It's certainly the case in the UK as well.
Interesting, right? As if it's an animal navigating through the woods. We don't have GPS, so then they end up using rivers or even train tracks. That's very interesting.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, very interesting. So you actually have a Man in Black. So I have a Man in Black story, and that's what this is, the contact event with a Man in Black and a gray alien here. There's a Man in Black sighting, and this is really interesting. So this one happens in Victoria in 1981. So a young man spotted a UFO over Victoria in 1981 and contacted Canadian UFO Research Network consultant and set up a meeting for the following Monday. Before the meeting, the young man went to a local mall. On stepping out of a phone booth, he saw two odd-looking men waiting to talk with him. They were standing stiff, as if standing at attention. The men were dressed in dark clothes. With a monotonous robot-like voice, one of the Men in Black asked him, "What is your name?" The young man replied, "I'm not going to tell you that." The other Man in Black asked him, "What is your number?" He thought it was an unusual question, as he did not say phone number. He did not answer that question either. The two Men in Black continued to stare at him in silence for a while. Then they turned in unison, like robots, and marched outside. It was raining heavily, and the two Men in Black walked past the parking lot into a nearby muddy field. As they approached a fence on the far side, they disappeared into thin air. The young man went into the field and found they had not even left footprints. At this point, he ran to the nearest bus stop to take him home. So they're paranormal, right? They're aliens, and I've always said this too. Men in Black are aliens, like the Men in Black are the actual aliens, and they're paranormal. They are weird, and I just love how they kind of screw up or whatever they're doing here. There's no way they're screwing up. I think this is on purpose when they always act like robots. But they just, I think you could write a book just on the comedy of how many times they say something robotic. There's I'm certain, I can't remember the story. It was someone else who had a sighting. He was in the paper for it, and then the Men in Black showed up at his house, and then the guy said, I have to go and recharge myself. So they're always saying something robotic. Like if they were an intelligent species, you wouldn't constantly, every time you're interacting with a human, say something robotic. I just find that whole thing just ridiculously, and like it's ridiculous actually, but just total comedy. And in the moment, I think it terrifies people, right? Like, oh, they treat it seriously, and maybe it is serious. I don't know the degree with which what these things can do. I don't understand the whole picture, but why are they always tripping themselves up with exposing that they are robotic? Like, that is just such a weird, a weird thing to me. I just find it funny.
Yeah, another feature there is where the men in black don't leave footprints. There's that famous picture, the drawing or the sketch from, I believe it's Gray Barker, the three men, flying saucers and three men from back in the 50s. That sketch where they're actually portrayed as, let's say, floating above the ground, and that's how they've been described as well, as not actually making contact with the ground, and their feet are actually shown in the illustration just dragging almost backwards as though they're floating without putting their feet on the ground.
Interesting. Yeah.
But here's another funny thing, and a contactee actually sent me a video that she'd slowed down, no, a photograph that she'd taken of a man in black in a southern, a southern coastal UK town, and a man in black was walking along the street. She'd had multiple encounters of that, so she knew this guy, this was something odd. And when we look at the picture that she's taken of this man in black, his foot is bent in an awkward angle. It's too much of an awkward angle for a human foot. It's bent up and out of place. I'll show you that picture sometime, but that is bizarre as well.
What's going on here? What is happening? This is so, and like, again, I'm always at the paranormal it goes, then the observation, how it's internalized, still part of the story. And they want to do this. There's no way that an intelligent species is not doing this stuff on purpose. I can't figure it out. And for me, they want to trip you up. They're even giving you the impression that you're being watched, so it terrifies you. So you don't want to report things, right? Like I can't wrap my head around it, but it's hilarious nonetheless. Yeah.
Yes, it's surreal. It's almost like it's parody of itself. The way that surely they can't be this stupid to just do. To do this, we had Terry Lovelace talking about his encounter with the woman in black, and he says that his first thought when he sees her is that wig looks ridiculous, because it's obvious she's wearing a wig and it's not even placed properly on her head. It just looks so strange, so
just like
weird.
Placed it, just like put it on. Just put it on without even putting it lining it properly.
Do a much better job of it.
Right. That's awesome. So yeah, just again, more, again, here was one by Portman Bridge, in the Port Coquitlam area. I just thought that was really fascinating. So lots and lots of stuff here. Contact event number 18. Okay, so this is the point of my story where I was witnessing a lot of orbs in the sky. And I assumed doing this presentation, I would find a lot of things in the Okanagan. That's where this contact event number 18 occurs. And there's nothing. There was barely any in the area. So I get a couple flip-flops. I thought that for certain I would have a lot of sightings out in this area, and there's nothing. There's a couple that were slightly interesting that I won't talk about that happened in Oliver, which is just here on the other side of the mountain. Other than that, there just isn't a lot. And I just thought that was a really interesting flip for my story, that the one area that I feel like would have a lot actually doesn't really have that much. So Duncan, though, my contact event in Duncan is incredibly short. This is where I experienced the mantis in the White Room, and the place is ripe with paranormal activity. I had no idea what Duncan actually was. And for those who live in Duncan, so that's the rough area of my contact event, because I can't remember the exact farm I was at. But there's two missing 411 cases out here. Both of them are hunters. Both of them are previously searched areas. And then the bodies show up years later in the exact area that they were searched. But that's very weird. And they're so similar, both of these. They occur in such close proximity, 1943, 1944. This one's Shawnigan Lake. This one's Cowichan Lake. We're just talking kilometers away from each other. So yeah, the Shawnigan Lake is... Shawnigan Lake is over here, and Cowichan Lake is over this way. So, but they're in the same rough proximity area, and they're just so oddly similar. Hunters who go missing close to people, not close, but they're within party groups. This Leslie Heal one is also really interesting. It's very similar to the documentary that David Paulides did, in which He goes out with a group of hunters. They all span out, covering a mountainside. They hear a gunshot and a yell, but they don't think too much about it. And then when they try to come back together, they don't find anybody. And then they realize that the gunshot and yell might have been consistent with Leslie experiencing something. But again, if this was a UFO activity, having a yell and a shot means he was most likely approached by an entity, something he saw that made him fire off his gun and also yell. If it was a UFO, it wouldn't have done that. It would have been from above and you wouldn't have seen it. So again, it's something that's not consistent with UFO activity. It's something that's consistent with something living in the forest that he's interacting with. Again, those are, and again, hunter, what are people going to do when they're hunting is that they're looking to kill something in the forest. So that's really interesting. The UFO sightings in the area, though, at the time were up, though. 1947, this was in the paper. Mr. George Clayard's company police officer for Honeymoon Bay. So large light objects careening through the sky, the saucers sped across the heavens and dipped in undulating motion. 1948, so this one was really huge. A woman and a husband en route from Cowichan Lake to from Duncan. So they're here, they're going here. There's a road right here. I've driven on this road. They were enveloped in a green light. When she looked above, she saw, I remember letting out a gasp for the sight I saw was unbelievable. There, hovering just above the trees, was a high round shape. From all around, in green and yellow lights were pulsating around it. This thing was huge, covered and continued to hover, and I stared spellbound. Suddenly, it was positively shot out of sight. The Victoria Day columnist wrote about this following morning with an article of a flying object over Duncan. One lady who was taking out her garbage can saw it and fainted. So there were, legitimate people who saw an object in green, and it was in this area here.
And can I just say
that
final bit, the lady who was taking out the garbage can and fainted, maybe she came to after an abduction experience, but in those days they didn't even know it was an abduction.
Oh, you got it, man. Yeah, interesting. I love how you really gravitated towards this next one. This is the nurse. Like this is the stuff of nighttime tales for children in the books of mysterious. UFO occupants seen near hospital. So this is in Cowichan, right over here. Lake Cowichan is a hospital, and the woman, this is her hospital, opens the blinds, and a UFO is standing there, not lit up. She sees occupants inside. She's spellbound, staring at it. The men inside, they're humanoids. They don't see her. They're doing something on controls. She's still spellbound. She's with other nurses in the room. She's seen watching. All of a sudden, the one man, tall, stands and turns around and knows he's being watched. He sees her. He says something to the other man in the controlling the controls. He does something else, and then the craft lights up and turns red. That's when another nurse comes around the corner and says, "What are you looking at?" And then this big bright red object is now moving away. And so the other nurse only witnesses a bright red object really close by. As it's cresting the forest, the trees, all the other nurses come around and they all see it. So you have a bunch of witnesses. You have a bunch of consistent testimony. And then it's really fascinating. There's a whole report that's done on it. And the report is UFO occupants seen near hospital. So they did a massive report on it. All these other people in the same area witnessed the same thing. And the light was seen by many other observers. So it's just a very fascinating story. Even a judge witnessed something very similar. So Judge George Hallett and his wife and 3 dinner guests, right? They all witnessed a huge orange colored light passing slowly over the waterfront close to their home at Mill Bay. So she saw it at Lake Cowichan, and then over at Mill Bay, they saw something. So over here is Mill Bay. So yeah, consistency with the craft. These are other people. Miss Drummond saw it, who saw it over the lake. Over
I was
going
to say, I've got another illustration there of the Canadian nurses.
Right.
Could you see that?
Yeah, you can see it a little bit. Yeah, it's similar craft. Yeah, you can see two men.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
that was the detail. And if you remember, we had Vanessa, who came up onto Vancouver UFO a couple of years ago, talking about her experiences in the UK. She actually saw a very similar craft with the people looking directly inside and seeing them. Oh, right. And again, we had that famous case from the 1950s in England. Again, described as a Mexican hat, which is
Right.
not too dissimilar to this, with beings seen inside in a clear cockpit.
Right.
So
Right.
these are
Interesting.
very, all
Mexican
very,
hat, clear cockpit. Yeah, right.
yeah, that's it.
Yeah, and this one, it turns red. So for those who, I was saying the red orbs are gray aliens. I can't say that they're all the time, because this one turned red, and then it's kind of similar, reddy orange. Yeah, but I just thought that was a really fascinating. Anyway, that's in the area of my contact event, and it's famous. It's kind of, as it's so famous, Ian knew about it as a kid.
I did. It was in my very first UFO book, Investigating UFOs, or Investigating Flying Saucers, maybe it was called, by Larry Kettlekamp. My very first UFO book.
That's awesome. That's weird. Weird stuff. And this is like they just connect that the whole area at the time had UFO sightings. So this is the mayor, and then he had a witness. He was a witness of a sighting as well too, the mayor of Duncan. So fascinating stuff. Okay, so this is gets really weird. The whole area of Duncan turned out to be a hotspot, and I didn't know about that. And Mount Provost, right off the mountain. This is Mount Provost here. So right outside the city of Duncan, you got Mount Provost. 3 people witnessed a large rectangle in the sky several kilometers away. Oh, this one. Slowly disintegrating, with pieces looking like they were falling to the ground amongst welding-like sparks. Hey, Ian, isn't that similar to the Wendlesham Forest?
The sparks that fell off.
Yeah. So in the Wendlesham Forest, the military men are witness. I thought I remembered they said it was an eye, and it was like melted lava or molten pieces were falling off, but there was no evidence of any material on the ground. Just these things were falling off that looked like it was sparks. Yeah.
That's right. They did describe that, because what was interesting as well was that on that same, or on one of the nights that the craft was seen in the forest, there was also the famous Cash Landrum event in Texas, where Betty Cash and her, I can't remember if it was her mother and her grandson, they were traveling in a car, and they saw this huge object being escorted by these, I believe it was 21 Chinook helicopters.
That's right.
And they also witnessed bits falling off it like molten lava.
Oh, I didn't know that one.
A very similar thing. But this happened at exactly the same time frame as the Rendlesham Forest incident.
That's the one where she got burned, right? That's the evidence they left, was that they got burnt. I think the grandma.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, and suffered most likely radiation poisoning.
Radiation poisoning, yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And died,
so that's,
died of it.
You got welding and falling apart here. Yeah, you get no evidence of any actual missing pieces, but they witnessed a large rectangle falling apart in the sky. I thought that was really interesting. In Duncan in 2000, 5 teenagers and young adults witnessed 15 crafts of a variety of colors, ranging from flashing blue, red, and green, and orange, all over Mount Provost. So right here, they would witness it all. And there was another person from Lake Cowichan who was able to witness that from the distance of Lake Cowichan. They could see it over top of Mount Provost. I thought that was really interesting. Oh, this is the satellite that makes an S. I just thought that was really weird, because the Elder sometimes is a satellite for me, and she does these weird crossing turnings. She will stop. She'll be a satellite, stop, flash. She does these weird activity, and they are a satellite, like just a dot that does weird behaviors. So, and they'll sputter out, they'll putter out, and they'll disappear. Weird things that they'll do as satellites. So they're, again, the observation, right? They want you to extend your belief. That's how I see it, where they want you to kind of push that envelope, where you have to kind of break your mind a little bit to accept the reality that you're looking at possibly a UFO. Ring of fire was witnessed, and that was someone's object, a drawing of a ring of fire. Okay, this one I loved too. Again, a man living under Mount Provost saw stationary lights 35 feet from him in a small stationary formation. They remained there all night and got brighter in intensity the harder it rained. In the morning, they were all gone. So again, Mount Provost. And I can only imagine he's called them floating lights. They just sat there stationary. And you're like, what the hell could this be? Like, so paranormal, so weird. And he was actually conversing with the ufobc database, or conversing with the investigators, like, what could this be? Is it bioluminescence? Like, there was no answer. My man was stumped. And again, you got the water, it got more intense with the rain. I just thought that was really interesting. Over Duncan, someone saw a metallic wobbling object with red and green lights. Right? I just thought that was over Mount Provost. In the contact event, I distinctly remembered when I became the me that knows them, I walk out and the air had changed. The electromagnetic field of the air had changed. Well, someone had described the exact same thing. When the UFO passed directly in front of me while it was over Quarry Island, a distinct, almost electromagnetic hum coursed through the air. I just couldn't, that rang exactly with my own description, and I just thought that was really weird. I never heard anyone say that before, and so that was just really consistent with my own experience. Again, just more stuff in Duncan. We're getting to the end here. 100 Mile House.
Before we move on, are you still on Duncan at the moment?
Yeah, not? Duncan. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I just wondered if you were going to cover the case of was it Granger Taylor? The guy who disappeared.
I think so. I did read my own research on that, and I'm certain he actually does blow himself up. It's committed suicide. So he's the one who said he wrote a note saying I'm going to go be abducted by aliens, right?
Yeah, for a 42-month journey or something, which was fascinating. But I'm glad you did some background, because that was another thing that Duncan is famous for, is that case from 1980, I believe it was.
Yeah, you're right. And I think he also I think he did it on Mount Provost. Funny enough, same mountain actually. But yeah, no, he actually the research behind it was that he actually had dynamite and he kills himself. It's unfortunate. He commits suicide. But yeah, he that was the story that he told people he was being abducted by aliens. Yeah.
But even if there's a logical end to that, he did record that he'd had many recurring dreams of ET contact, and that he felt that the ETs were after him.
Yeah, you're right.
That's the full story. I mean, Vice even did a piece on it. I think you can even watch it online somewhere.
Yeah,
Vice have done this documentary on it.
Yeah, I think it was from the Vice that I picked, that I did my own research on it, because I think that in the end they do put together that he blew himself up in a car. He actually, and all they had was just the pieces left, because it was so much dynamite, and people heard the explosion, but they didn't know what it was. And then it was like months later they put together that there was actually a blast site. There were pieces there, and then they recognized the car as having belonged to him, and then that was kind of the end of it. So yeah. 100 Mile House. Again, had no idea. My contact event here is very brief, but the amount of stuff that goes on here is huge. Had no idea. 100 Mile House. There's actually a famous, I think it was on History Channel, was someone's contact event, and it involved humanoids, and they were from 100 Mile House. I thought that was really interesting. I don't have any research on that, but I did remember seeing that somewhere. So that's just, a lot of stuff happens in 100 Mile House. And so this is missing time between 100 Mile House and Clinton. And it does look like someone actually had an abduction. And so she missed 40 minutes. She saw blue lights shaped in a V pattern hovering off to the side of the highway. And then she drove by the lights, baffled by what they could be. The next thing she remembered was pulling into her small community where she resides. When she thought about her experience, she realized she'd missed 40 minutes. She couldn't account for the missing time. She went looking for people who saw the lights. Not everyone did, but then it ended up being in the paper. So other people saw the lights, and that was really interesting. But otherwise, there wasn't too much else. But there was a lot of sightings, but not too much that was interesting. Massive black object, right? Bunch of stuff there. Cortez Island. That's my 21st contact event. Right from 1947, people have been reporting UFOs over Cortez Island, but largely they're seen from Campbell River and Cortez. Quadra, I mean. This fascinating video. So, I don't know. You can make what you think of it. But I actually thought the video was filmed on Quadra Island, so right by Cortez Island. And it's really weird when you see the other stationary lights there and you can see the person's filming it. It's obvious that this is a weird structure. Not a structure, I think. It's several independent lights all moving at the exact same speed. The consistency of how they maintain their formation clearly shows that this is something abnormal then. And so I just thought it was really weird. And of course, it's just blur lights for people, right? You can't really tell. But the way it moves is so interesting to me. And yeah. Anyway, that was done.
No, you're right. They maintain the same distance between themselves, don't they?
Yeah, and it's a strange formation, and it just maintains itself. Yeah. So and and the same with mine. They're actually orb. So when you zoom into them, you don't see any other type of helicopter pattern, helicopter lights, or anything like that. That was filmed in 2019 over Campbell River, from Campbell River over Quadra Island. That's the actual detail there, and I just thought that was really interesting. And that was actually, so let me just show you where that was. That's where my contact event was. And that was filmed right here. So pretty close, all in the same area. Otherwise, again, light though, compared to other locations. This is the last contact event. This is fascinating. This is my contact event in Squamish. This was the end of the majority of traveling for me and of my entire trip out in the world. And it turned out when I didn't know I was having contact events with aliens. And this one happened in Squamish, and this is the giant granite rock that I talk about. So Squamish. Okay, so what's really fascinating about the contact event here is some things have happened out on the islands out here that I thought were really interesting. 14 kids and 2 camp guides witnessed a colored round-shaped object hovering about 80 feet above them on Gambier Island. This is Gambier Island over here. So they were camping on Gambier Island. I just thought that was really interesting. Really close up the Howe Sound. Fury Creek, a couple got out of their car and observed an oval cylinder float in the sky. So that's over Fury Creek is right there. Gambier Island, a man recalls a sighting with 15 to 10 camp kids around a fire. A UFO approached overhead, then left. But check this out. For some reason, without having full recollection, everyone ran to their cabins, crying out of fear, and they never talked about it ever again. So for me, I think that's probably a landing, and then it was wiped from their minds, and there's something, it was terrifying to them, and they were like, oh my God, something's coming out of the craft, and then the entire thing is erased from their minds, right? It's such a strange...
That's a massive abduction event where typically
maybe
no
abduction,
one talks about it.
Yeah, maybe abduction. You know, there's a sighting, there's a one in Russia, and it lands, and then it does weird things. It's like I think instantaneously an alien appears. They don't see it walking out, an alien appears, and the quick behaviors freak everybody out, and then people get terrified, and then the aliens freeze. But these are not gray aliens or anything. These are kind of weird looking creatures, and they're in a spherical dome that happens in Russia in the 60s. Anyway, I just thought the whole thing was weird, but it's, you know, you can have an event like that and it can terrify everybody. It doesn't have to be an abduction. When the quick movements occur or weird behaviors, it can freak people out. And I can attest to even something like that gets really, you get terrified. You're dealing with something very intelligent. And so, yeah, very weird nonetheless, though. Yeah, don't have any recollection. They're all running to their cabins, crying out of fear, and they never talk about it ever again. That was on Gambier Island right here. So very strange. Okay, so a large UFO was caught on video in Squamish, and it was caught right at the exact spot on my contact event. This is a green orb. So CTV actually had sorry, because it's stalling because it's...
The late great astrophysicist Stephen Hawking believed, as CTV's Janet Dirks reports, some things just can't be explained.
I got it.
Oh my God.
That's...
Oh.
What the hell?
That strange light in the sky is one of 1,100 UFOs.
That is happening right over top of my contact event. So they filmed it. Yeah, they filmed it, and it was over top, and that's what that green light is. It's going over top of the Squamish Chief. So that's right over top of my contact event. Pretty weird stuff. Okay, so other than that, the contact events the sightings were light. Okay, but Ian, check this one out. Okay, so someone sees a weird beluga type creature in Deep Cove, over again where I actually had a contact event. This I was mentioning is kind of a paranormal hotspot, if you will. We talked about Deep Cove earlier, guys, for those who maybe not remember. Up the by Bunsen Lake, up Indian Arm, there's Deep Cove by Mount Seymour. So for those who remember, someone is boating in between Deep Cove and my own contact event, and they witness a weird creature. Boat crossing from Deep Cove to North Van to Bedwell Bay, which would be the other side where my contact event was at. Located on the other side of Indian Arm. About mid-channel, I happened to look down into the water, and there, approximately 10 feet below my boat, was a large white animal swimming along. It appeared to be about the same width as my boat, but about twice the length. The only thing I could think of is that it might have been a beluga whale, but there's no supposed to be any in our area. I never did see it again, and it was not a killer whale. This was 1971. I, with my wife, together. Okay, beluga whales are not in the area, and there's just no explanation for a beluga whale. Like they don't exist in the area, they're not seen, and they do get monitored. And so when they're in the area, they breach and people see them. Well, I came back in 2003 from Toronto. We were with my wife and a friend, me and my wife all hiked up the Squamish Chief. I'm back at the same location as my contact event. We're up top and down below. I'm on the spot where I had a contact event, and down below, right in here, we see a huge white animal. It's not a whale even, because it doesn't have the flipper tail.
Wow.
It's underneath the water. It's sitting still. It's moving like it's doing something under the water. It's up close to the land. I can't even and it's not breaching. It never breaches. And I'm like, and I sit up top and I'm like, hey, what the hell is that thing? And I'm up top here. I'm staring down at it. I'm like, what is that? And everyone's looking at it and we're like, oh, wow, it's so fascinating. I'm the one staring at it. My friends leave saying, yeah, it's kind of weird. And I'm like, but it doesn't make any sense. What the hell could that be? We don't get, and it was too large to be a beluga. It was huge. The thing was goddamn massive. It never breached. It didn't have the flipper tail like a whale. And I always remembered it. I brought it up with my wife after reading this report, because I thought this guy who left the report was an experiencer. He's an experiencer. That's why they put the report on the ufobc database. And I thought that was really weird. And when I read it, I went, what the hell? I witnessed something like this too. And I thought that was really strange. And mine's in the location of a contact event. He witnesses this in the other area close to my contact event. All of that is just a bunch of weirdness to me. And yet there's no explanation for it, because it wasn't a beluga. Mine never breached. It didn't do any type of beluga whale. It was too big to be a beluga whale. Never mind that they're not in the area. So, I mean, maybe it's an abnormal beluga whale, but just even the synchronicity of that being associated with another person witnessing it who's an experiencer, I don't know. Strange stuff, man.
I would say it's all part of the associated phenomena. It's probably all sorts of cryptids involved, including sea creatures such as a lake monster. Let me just say as well, this area where it happened, we were talking about this the other night with the area of the Hudson River. Now, Alan Steinfeld, who I work with as well sometimes, says that part of the northern New Jersey area has long been a hub of UFO sightings. J. Allen Hynek wrote the book about night siege in the area or contributed to the book. Some people claim it is because of the Hudson River itself being an estuary, a river with tides that mixes fresh water with salt water and creates a special energy. This could be the case as well with where you are in Vancouver. Now, the Native Americans, the indigenous people of the area, have a long tradition of strange things happening along the river. So it may be interesting as well to check with indigenous populations around estuaries where the salt water mixes with the fresh water.
Interesting, man. Yeah, it's something electromagnetic. Again, paranormal ecosystems. So you got some kind of electromagnetic field effect that goes on, that consciousness creatures, different types, can interact or gravitate towards it. I'm not really clear. Okay. Okay. So for me, this was a lot of evidence. That's what this was. This was the evidence of my story. Listen, this happened to me. And as we summarize, I think these are all happening in paranormal ecosystems where everything kind of congregates with each other and they have similar type of expressions as they manifest in physical reality, like the whooshing and wailing sounds that only appear to happen in one spot, YVR, and it repeats itself with me and with other people. The same entity then goes and expresses itself in a different way, as red orbs, as I'm living in my house, then goes and expresses the same entity, then goes and expresses itself another different way in a different physical environment. That's how I see this. So very fascinating indeed. So this is the kind of statement that I like to make. I like to be bold about this stuff. Some things that can't be denied if you believe my story. aliens can see the future. Because if you believe it, if you have any inclination to believe my story, then there's some things that can't be denied about my story. Like you can't twist it any other way. The aliens can see the future. They are in the afterlife and do interact with higher selves. They have consciousness technology that interacts with your soul. That's the whole other part too. That's what this is. This is some kind of consciousness technology equipment that I think assists them with paranormal activity. My worldview is therefore important because it intertwines with the experience, and it can't be denied the intertwining of it. That there is a God element to the self. That visioning, manipulating space-time through visioning is real, and that the hybrids are coming, because that's what the whole story was with me. So, okay, that was it. Holy crap, that was a long presentation. 3.5 hours, I think that was, eh? Yeah. Thank you for everybody for participating. This is totally nuts, but.
No, that was incredible, Jeff. And it was so good to actually see all together as we hovered over Google Earth where these sightings were and where your contact events were, etc. That was so helpful.
Yeah. Woo! Wow, I think that's where we're at, eh? We're at okay. I'm going to stop the share. Wow, look how many people are still here. Wow, thanks guys.
The diehards.
Yeah, diehards. I really totally impressive. I'm impressed with all you for staying. I have to say that. So, holy crap, that was a pretty intense presentation. Thank you for everyone for being here. The utmost kindness for sticking around, actually. I don't know what you've been saying. I've seen lots of chats, but I haven't been paying attention because I've been trying to get burned through the presentation, but I knew it was going to be heavy. So I really, that was 3.5 hours. So thank you so much. I mean, this is intense. And so I wanted to get the information out there.